We are on the hour, so welcome everyone to the final of these live events as part of the Quilt and Learn program this January 2025. I have a wonderful panel with me who I've just been chatting with. Rather than try and introduce them to you, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So in the order that they are on my screen, we've got Celeste, Laurie, and Manon, and we might still have Elizabeth join us. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But Celeste, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you. My name is Celeste Compion. I'm living in Ontario in Canada, but I was born in South Africa. I am a rabid quilter since the 80s. And besides quilting, also a high school teacher who's now retired. So 10 years ago, I started a business importing shweshwe from South Africa, which is a cotton with a history. So besides that, I teach quilting, I write patterns, I live quilting. It's a dream. I live the dream.
That's it. You're living the dream life. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Laurie, how about you?
Sure. I'm Laurie Thompson with Colorado Threadworks. And as I mentioned, I'm now in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. I started sewing as a 4-H kid in Kansas and mainly did garments and textiles till about 2016. And then my friend got a long arm and she quilted my first quilt, and that's how I got hooked. Um, so I teach, I design. I also have a nonprofit background. And I manage the Quilts of Valor Foundation here in the US from 21 to 23. I'm very passionate about quilting and community, and also belong to a great guild out of the Denver area that's a hybrid guild that's part virtual, part in person. That's a cool experience. So um, just excited to be here and learn and share.
Wonderful to have you. Thank you. And then lastly, Manon, take it away.
Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. So I'm Manon of Mum and Me Quilting Co., and I'm joining you from Ontario, Canada. So over the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of helping quilters kind of expand their skills to create and complete their quilting projects. I'm the founder of the Quilt Creators Club and Motif Builder Academy. I'm an educator, pattern designer, and a free motion long arm quilter since 2003. And I love everything about quilting. So thank you, Bea, for organizing this fabulous event and inviting me here today. I'm looking forward to this discussion and answering any questions that our participants may have.
Absolutely. And participants can contribute questions in the chat or in the Q&A at any point as we go along. And I mustn't forget to introduce myself as well, which I usually forget to do. I'm Bea Byrne, and I got laid off from big tech a couple of years ago and decided that's enough now of that kind of thing, and decided to go into the quilting life. So now teacher, lecturer, and event organizer as well. So got the trifecta there. Well, it's great to have you all with us. And the topic that we're discussing today is kind of charity and community within quilting. And so I'd love to just get an idea of how you're involved in that kind of area at the moment, and what kind of activities you're doing. And I know we've got some pictures which we can bring in at any time. But Manon, do you want to kick us off and talk about how you've been involved in this area?
Sure. So I kind of have a little story that I'd like to share about donating. And so way back when I had my brick and mortar shop, a lovely woman named Pam approached me and she asked me if I'd be interested in donating items for preemie quilts. And I thought, this is such a beautiful idea. So what more could I do? How could I take this a step further? It's not just donating things. So I decided, why not open up my classroom and host a sewing bee? And so, not to my surprise, because we have such generosity in our hobby, the classroom was full. And we had so much fun working together, kind of assembly line style. Some were piecing, some were sandwiching, I was quilting, and others were binding. And it was really an incredible experience, you know, full of laughter and really community spirit. And I continue to host these sewing bees several times a year, creating so many beautiful little preemie quilts for our local NICU, which is the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, and also through Project Linus for a little bit bigger quilts. And, you know, these gatherings were not only really productive, but they were incredibly joyful and fulfilling. As many of you know, it's really, it feels very amazing to give back. And the heartfelt letters that we would receive from families, it was so touching. So fast forward a few years later, and I had my beautiful twin girls, and they were born prematurely and needed to be in the NICU unit. And so I was quite sick and I couldn't see them right away. But when I finally entered the NICU and I saw them wrapped in a quilt, and they were so tiny that they only needed one quilt for the both of them. But seeing, you know, my tiny little babes wrapped in that quilt made by a stranger, this almost like overwhelming feeling, like a huge wave of comfort and reassurance washing over me. And it made me feel like, you know, deep down, everything's going to be okay. And it really was a full circle moment for me. And
absolutely.
That's when I really realized that, you know, kind of firsthand, the profound impact of these small acts of kindness that we do. And I truly understood how much these quilts mean to the families who receive them. And my girls are 16 now, and you heard, I still get emotional when I share this, because, and like, I just want people to know that your generosity and your kindness truly, truly creates a lasting impact.
Oh, that's a lovely story, because I realize now I've never personally known anyone that's been in receipt of one of these quilts. And I can definitely relate to that experience of kind of opening up the classroom, people coming together. That's something that my local guild has done numerous times, and that it allows people to play to their strengths. You know, some people are great at piecing tops, some people are great at quilting, some people are great at binding. And you can kind of split out the work, which I think is a real part of the community aspect of this.
Right.
Laurie, what about you? What's been your involvement in this area? I know, well, you've had like major involvement as a director at the director level.
Yeah, there's been a range of involvement. I mean, through the years, I've made Linus blankets, you know, similar to what Manon's talking about. And then my guild is really active. They make over 500 charity quilts a year, and they have about 200 members. And I've long armed for them. But, you know, as you mentioned, probably my biggest chapter has been working with the Quilts of Valor Foundation here in the US. And I discovered them 2 years ago. I had a friend that had done some volunteer long arming for them, and they were looking for a director, and it was a way to combine, you know, my nonprofit experience and quilting. It was kind of a one of those rare things. But I just fell in love with their mission, and their mission is to create quilts of valor to provide comfort and healing for service members and veterans that have been touched by war. And it's a lovely organization. It's nonpartisan, non-political. Everybody just comes together and focuses on the mission, and just really inspiring. And much like what Manon was talking about with the classroom and the groups coming together, Quilts of Valor has over 11,000 members that come together across the US. And, you know, they'll get together and have sew days, they'll plan these awards, and they become a really strong bee or a strong family in many cases. And, you know, it's just been really inspiring. I did serve on staff again from 21 to 23, but now I kind of get to do the fun volunteer thing. And so been helping with the local chapter and connect guilds to making quilts and understanding it more, and then just supporting the team still as needed. So
And you've got some pictures to
I
share,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Shall I get those up? I don't want to
Yeah.
force you to introduce them now, but it seems like a good time.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Here we
go
Here
through
we go.
those. Thank you.
Let's get these up. And I think, is this your first one? I think. Oh no, here we go.
Yeah.
You make that into a slideshow, and then I need to give you slide control permission.
Okay.
Oops, just click that button. I'll give all of you slide control permission so you can all jump in at various times. But there you go. You should have, oh, sorry, you should have access now, Laurie.
Okay, great. Yep, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, just a quick overview. So one great thing about QOVF is it was just founded by one person's idea. And I hope that's something everybody takes away today is that you can have an idea, you can start really small and it can grow into something that's really impactful. So it was founded in 2003 by Catherine Roberts, who literally had a dream. She dreamt, her son was deployed at the time over in Iraq, and she had a dream about a soldier that was distraught and somebody wrapped a quilt around him and comforted him. And that was the spark. She wanted to take that idea and got her friends together that quilted, and they started making the first quilts of valor. Um, it's grown to where there's been over officially 400,000 quilts awarded to service members and veterans. Members make over 30,000 quilts a year. And then they figured out in 2019 that the members in the organization have a $9 million impact on the quilting industry, which I'm thinking is probably closer to 10 to 12,000 or 12 million right now.
Is this buying materials to make the quilts?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if local quilt shops have really stepped up to support the cause, but they benefit as well. So it's kind of this great reciprocation. So, and QOVF in the US, I mean, it's just one organization. There's many things like this, many types of quilts of valor in other countries. And in fact, in Canada, it's even more popular. So it was exciting to hear how things worked within their organization.
Right. Marge, one of the attendees has just posted the Canadian link in the
Oh.
chat, which is great. Now, one question I always have, because there's a kind of fascination as a Brit, as a UK citizen. Americans, they really love their flag. They really love their flag, right? And so
Yeah.
quilts don't have to be red, white, and blue, right? They have all sorts of different ones.
Correct. Yeah, they, really, we deferred to what the recipient wants. For example, we had a female veteran in Florida. She loved flamingos, so they made her a quilt with pinks and flamingos in it. We've got somebody else here in Colorado. They're going to make a t-shirt quilt, some military t-shirts. I mean, we do have certain guidelines that we recommend, but yeah, it can definitely fit what, the recipient wants.
Oh, this is wonderful. And are there more? I think you've got a couple more images, right? Or
Yeah,
should we
yeah.
advance those later, or
Or I can briefly
yeah,
talk about them. So yeah, let me go ahead and advance those.
oh,
Yeah, so just to give you a sample of some of the awards, and the awards range from going to somebody's home and doing a very personal award, because often some of our veterans will have trauma, and we have a way to be respectful around that. So, some awards just may be very intimate, just somebody there with the family. Sometimes families organize their own awards and work with us. But one of the things is everybody gets a quilty hug. During the ceremony, the quilt is wrapped around them, which is a cool moment. And then the picture here.
My hook to go with it. That's a particularly cool moment.
Oh, the quilty hug. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then on the right is Reverend Callerson. He worked with Catherine Roberts to award the first Quilts of Valor at Walter Reed Hospital in 2003. He was at our conference in 2023, and it was kind of a fangirl moment among members to meet him, but just a really, really generous person. And he talked about how, the first quilts, they just started handing them out, but as momentum grew, they ended up having to give them like a storage facility. So again, yeah, just from one idea. So, and then just a couple quick things. We had a couple really notable awards. So, I talked about how you have the really intimate ones, and then you'll have the group ceremonies, and all awards are great, no matter how they happen. The one down here on the lower left was at the National Quilt Museum in Paducah, and these were quilts that were made by designers in a book that QOVF had published, but that was a cool moment to have those awarded. And then we did a couple of awards on TV in 2023. And so Colonel Jacobs is one of the most decorated veterans of the Vietnam era. And that was really cool to award that on MSNBC's Morning Joe. So,
Wow.
yeah. So
Gosh,
just,
I'm getting shivers. I'm getting shivers looking at this. What an extraordinary thing. And of course, so I don't know, I feel like there's such a contrast between the idea of like active service and then a warm, snuggly quilt. It's like two extremes in the same landscape. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And then Celeste, should we talk to you and then come to your slides, or should we go through your slides first, or what would be best here?
It might be a good idea to go to the slides because they follow a story for me as well.
Okay, let me just come out of this and go back to the beginning and share that again. There we go. And you should have control of that now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
So some of, when Manon was talking about being a recipient and the emotions that releases in you, for me, all of this is really emotional. As a newcomer to Canada in 2001, I went to a big quilt show, and they were busy starting to make the quilt of belonging. And I've put a link to be able to go to their website.
Mm.
And it is a quilt that has the craft of all the countries of the world who have someone living in Canada, plus all the First Nations who were here before, their craft as well. And some of those nations no longer exist, but they are represented in this quilt of belonging. So I saw them busy, they were talking about it, and there were people busy stitching and so on. And I was a newbie. I was in the country 6 months. So I said, do you have a block for South Africa? And they said, yes, we do. I was like, oh no. So I thought, well, what else do you have in Southern Africa? And they needed someone to make a block for Namibia. And Namibia is just north of South Africa. They didn't have anybody. And at that time, my brother and his wife were living in Namibia. And so that was enough. That connection got me in. And I made this block for the quilt of belonging. And if you go onto the website, it literally shows every single block. So I haven't got that included here. But the thing that was moving was you made the block, and I put shwe shwe in it. In those days, I wasn't doing, I know I was just a quilter who taught in a high school, but shwe shwe is involved in Southern Africa. So there's some shwe shwe in this block as well. And you could finish it and then send it to a little town on the border of Ontario and Quebec. I've gone blank on the name of the town, but it's also on the website. But my mother and father came to visit us for a summer holiday, and we took them to Montreal on a road trip. And so we delivered that block ourselves to this little town.
Lovely.
And they met my mother and father. I'm like really emotional about it. And my mother and father could participate in this amazingly welcoming thing that a newcomer to a new country experienced through a quilt. And then the other thing was that at that time was Jean Chrétien was the prime minister. And on Multiculturalism Day, everybody who worked on this quilt was given a presidential, a formal invite to a meal, an event in Ottawa to celebrate. And I couldn't go.
Oh.
I mean, it's like one of those horrible things that I couldn't attend. But I remember writing to my friends in Cape Town and saying, quilters get invited to go and have a meal with the Prime Minister of Canada. It's like amazing.
That is amazing. And it
really I really recommend that you go and have a look at this website if you get the
Yes,
chance.
I
Oh, thanks.
put it
Put the
in
link.
chat.
Thank you.
And it says 263 blocks, 120 feet long. So
Yeah.
this is you're going to need some time to look at this.
And it doesn't belong in one place, it travels. So on the website, you can check when it's coming to your neighborhood, and it travels internationally as well. It is amazing. The woman who started it all has passed away, but it was her idea, and she just went with it, with volunteer help. Just an amazing story. Please have a look at that. So
yeah, there's a
really, I
documentary
can
as
get
well.
really carried away about this.
Well, no, rightly so. There's a documentary on the website which I will certainly be
Yes,
bookmarking for later.
it's really
well,
worth it.
This is fantastic. And then you've got some other images as well, right?
Yes. So the next one is community. I'm a new person in the country. I get a job at a high school, and I'm a teacher. I teach math and I teach English and stuff, but the thing that fuels me is knitting and quilting. Like really, that's in my soul. And so I started a quilting and knitting club at the school. And we made blankets and quilts for the local retirement center, and there is a center for people with Alzheimer's in our community. And so we would make blankets and quilts for this group. It was also a place for people to go at lunchtime. So there was that community experience happening besides the fact that they were reaching out and doing things for other people. And clearly it was a cool place to hang out. If you look at this photograph, we had some lovely, lovely times with these students. And then I don't know whether you have pink t-shirt day in the USA as well, or in other countries, but in Canada, there is a pink t-shirt day, and it's all about anti-bullying. And so what we did for 2 years running was we made our own quilt of belonging at the school where I taught. The first one, people donated a little square. We gave them fabric, and they drew a little picture on a square, and then the volunteers in my group made the quilt. So that was the peace day. And then the quilt of belonging hangs in the entrance hall of the school. So it's there. I'm no longer working there, but that quilt is still there. And everybody's involved, from the custodial staff and the secretaries and the hockey team, and everybody made little blocks, and we made our school quilt of belonging for the pink t-shirt day. And so it was about inclusiveness and belonging and community. So at the same time, I started sewing bees at my home once a month with the staff. So my husband is a barista, and he would make us coffee, and that fueled us. And we made quilts for the school, but we also did things like making sanitary towels in little bags that were sent off to the Honduras, and those kind of projects as well. And women would come. We didn't really have men on the staff who joined this group. It was mostly women, but everybody was welcome. But sometimes there would be even like some of the younger women would bring their baby for the day because they didn't have a babysitter. And the group would just help with that. It was a really wonderful bonding experience. And for me, especially as a new person, because I came not knowing anybody. So quilting has always been my segue to connect with people. So besides making stuff for the school, we then did these outreach fundraising things from the school as well, that I would go onto Bonnie Hunter's free patterns, and then I would have a group of 6 or 7 women who helped me with cutting, and we would have instructions, and people could sew at home or come and sew at my house, and we would make these quilts and then raise money for local charities in our community. And then COVID comes. we have the lockdown, and I started a weekly group on a Friday morning on Zoom. We would sew together and just keep sane. That group still meets to this day. During the summer,
Wow.
we meet once a month in the summer, but in the winter months, we meet every Friday, and
Mm-hmm.
we are sisters. Like,
Oh,
the
yeah.
bonding has been incredible. Some people have passed away. Some people have been sick, and we make things for each other. You know, in quiet, there's a thing going on. We
Mm.
also made a quilt for MAD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, because we knew someone who had passed away in an accident. And in this group, there is someone who regularly makes quilts for Victoria's Quilts in Canada. It's for people with cancer. So that's a website you can check out to make donations.
Yes, one of the people watching on the live stream, one of the previous events, was saying that she made a lot of quilts for cancer, people going through cancer treatment, because she herself was a survivor. And as a survivor myself, I'm all in favor of such things. I think it's a wonderful thing to be doing. Well, that's fantastic that you're still meeting. Are there more photos, or should we?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
No,
Thank
no, don't worry. I just want to make sure we're not, yeah, not.
So out of this group was born 3 blocks of the month series that they said, let's do something. Besides that, we made things that were for charity, but let's do a project. And I designed You've Got a Friend, which in 2020 we released month by month. It was a free block of the month. I had like over 500 people from all over the world who signed up, and I still see people posting this quilt. So it's very heartwarming, and it was all about COVID. So, you know, Zooming and your sewing machine, and we had one star in the corner here with the US flag, and then this was for Canada. But I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, well, I'm from Australia and I'm from the Ukraine. And, you know, so I started designing a whole bunch of little squares to go in the middle there. That you can put your own flag in there. After that, the next year, I did a block of the month called K-Drama Drama, because I am a Korean drama nut. And I saw something in a drama that influenced this design. Also, a huge following of people all over the world who made this one. And then the last one is just finished. I did the basket case block of the month, because we are basket cases for sewing, but they were all baskets inspired by African baskets. And that finished in December. So I'm beginning to see finished pictures. So the one on the left is mine that I did in chocolate brown, but the one on the right is in bright colors by a friend who's in one of the guilds I belong to.
I mean,
So
is the bright colored one also shui shui?
they're both shui shui. So yeah, my friend
Colours
Wendy
amazing.
is a shui shui fan.
Mm.
And I think the thing that fuels this kind of thing with quilting is old. You know, the quilting bee has been around forever.
Yeah.
And there, as you were saying before, people have of different strengths do different things. And then there are even the people who say, well, I'm not really a sewer, but I want to join you. I will make the coffee, or I will bake something.
Yeah.
And just hang out and hold the baby. But Manon's response about the emotion of receiving, I haven't actually spoken to anybody who's received a quilt like that. And that really will stay with me.
Absolutely. It really brings it home to you.
Mm.
And I know, yeah, sorry, Manon,
In
go.
the first live discussion, Patty mentioned something about how when she makes these quilts. The recipient will feel the love because it was made with love, and it's like a hug that wraps you. And that was kind of the feeling, you know, that they were wrapped in that hug, they were wrapped in that love, that even though I couldn't be there right away, you know, that they were safe and they were comforted by that. And that, you know, it just brings up that emotion of, you know, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And that's the beauty of quilting. It affects us. Yeah.
And I know my introduction to all of this was through my guild, who have an outreach program, and I think a lot of the bigger guilds do have relationships with local neonatal units and homeless shelters and so on. But I know from the last event, talking to people, the US and Canada is very fairly well structured in terms of guilds and regional coverage, but other countries like the UK, for example, is not so organized. So for people that don't have guilds, how can they get involved in this kind of thing? What would your advice to them be? Laurie, sorry to pick on you first, but do you want to kick us off?
Sure, sure. You know, I think just start, there's two ways maybe to look at it. Number one, just start quilting with a friend. And I do a lot of that too, and just get together and formally sew together. And if you don't know somebody, or you could always kind of put a note out. One time, well, a few years ago, I went ahead and put a note out on Meetup, and we just sewed together for a while. You know, just got together, and then you can also find sometimes, I think, people online and just sew. You don't have to do it in person. In fact, the guild that I belong to, you know, I'd mentioned earlier that they do a lot of virtual stuff. They have a Friday night social twice a month that people can just join in and do. So, yeah, I think you just start simple, invite somebody, much like what Celeste talked about, you know, with her community, you know, with her colleagues and sewing together. So,
Yeah, no, wonderful. And Celeste, what would your advice be?
So I exactly what Laurie had mentioned, but we're really lucky with the internet. You know, there's a world out there. You just Google and something's going to come up. Do you know about the Water is Life quilts?
No, I've not heard of those ones.
It's United Nations. It's backed by the United Nations. It's called Water is Life. And I first became aware of it in 2016. So I don't know whether it's ongoing or if it was just at that time. And it was when there was that awareness about especially the impact of water on the lives of women and girls. That there were some girls who couldn't even go to school because all they did was walk somewhere far and bring water back. And so the United Nations had this event to publicize that information, and people made quilts for that event. So I know this is a very vague kind of thing that I'm talking about, but I'm sure that it can be Googled.
Yeah, I'll find something to add to the notes about that.
And there's another one that someone has told me about. It's something to do with sisters, and it connects first world with African students who make something, and then a first world person helps to teach a skill with the stitching, and together they make a project which is also about fundraising and awareness. But I would have to Google that information, and I'll put it in the chat because this is also very vague.
Yes, all right, wonderful. And I know that there's kind of well-known organizations like Project Linus.
Yes.
Now, is Project Linus for children who are in the care system? Is that what that is? Or is it just for children generally? Do you know, I should have looked this up before we came on. But I think it's children-based.
Yeah.
Is it children in hospital or that? Yeah, I think it's being in hospital.
yeah, and it can be a quilt, it can be a crocheted blanket, a fleece blanket. My daughter received one when she was 2, and it was a fleece blanket that she loved to death.
Oh, lovely. And I've seen fabric specifically printed with Project Linus as well in some quilt stores. So I think they have their own range. Yes, no, it's fascinating. I mean, quilting has always been a communal thing, the idea of people sitting around a frame or kind of sharing fabric resources and so on. And it seems to be something compelling just as soon as you start making things. I suppose you inevitably nowadays, in the past, materials would have been more precious and you would have had less of them and perhaps less time, but now you inevitably run out of people to gift things to in your own circle as well. So it's a way to keep making, rather than just kind of ending up with a cupboard full of quilts. You can get them out into the community. Manon, yeah.
So I agree with Celeste and Lori. Just look online and you can find something that that appeals to you. And also, little encouragement is that you don't have to also just think about donating a full quilt. Even if you're not making, like a little top, or even for the preemie quilts, if you have 4 orphan blocks sitting around that will never get used, you can put them together, or even simply donate them as is. And with the little preemies, it's always a great way to practice your free motion quilting. That's often where I'm playing and try out new motif builds, but and even simply donating fabric. I know that I had this mystery quilt, and there was nothing wrong with the quilt. It was a quilt top, but I just, once the mystery was done, there was nothing about it that I enjoyed, like that I liked about the quilt. And so I asked a friend of mine who was a member of the Victoria Quilts, and that's the Quilts for Cancer patients. And I said, could you guys use this? And she was delighted because it would save them so much time, because the top was already created. Now all we had to do was quilt it. And it would be one more quilt that could reach a recipient so much sooner. And they're always looking for, batting and backings and fabric to finish, to bind. So you don't need to feel that it has to be an entire quilt that you need to create. Your UFO pile. Sometimes there's things in there that you'll never finish, right? Well, these projects are great to donate to these causes.
My own guild in San Francisco has had a project the last few years where they've encouraged members to bring in their orphan blocks or their unfinished objects or unfinished projects. And then they mix them all up and give everyone a grocery bag with a random assortment of things in it. And the challenge is then to create a top using the random assortments and somehow bring them all together. And that is a great source of charity quilts. Yeah, ones I know that I've certainly made ones where I finished the top, just like you've said, Manon, and it's just been like, okay, well, that was interesting, but I don't really want to do anything else with that now. Like I don't feel like quilting it or whatever, and I'm just gonna move it on, and it will make a great donation for someone, and someone will enjoy quilting it at some point in the future as well. Yeah.
So I've added in the chat, water is life on the United Nations website. It's
wonderful.
dated. It was 2005 to 2015. So
okay.
a long time ago. But the other one that jumped in my mind is the Quilts for Survivors in Canada, for the survivors of the residential schools.
Yes.
So a woman who was connected to that community kind of got this going in Timmins. It is now a huge internationally supported group. It's amazing. And I've met her. She's an amazing lady. And so people can make blocks, a top, or a finished quilt and send them to Quilts for Survivors in Timmins, Ontario. And then they get reassigned. And I was very excited because I've made 2 quilts. And in both cases, instead of me sending it to them, they gave me a name and address, and they said, you can send it with a little message. And then you get someone writing back to you. It was lovely. And there was a change of address. And so the quilt went to the wrong address, and I had the phone number of the person. So we're talking, and she's saying, I'm going to go to that address. I know where it is. It's where we used to live. There was a party going on at that house. She went into the party and got her quilt.
Amazing.
It's so hilarious.
Absolutely amazing. And I know there are companies that will support these endeavors as well. Here in the US, I don't know if it's in Canada as well or other countries, Hobbs batting.
Yes.
Specifically is the one that jumps to mind. Even if you're just buying the batting for your own use, for your own quilts, if you save the label on the back and collect, I don't know, 10 labels or something, they will give you a free batting for your guild to use. And so it doesn't need to be an expensive exercise for a group to do. There are ways to access different materials, and certainly our guild has a very successful free table, which is, it just amazes me. Every month it's groaning under the weight of the fabric that's there. And this is on top of our having an annual auction, when often people who have passed away, their fabric stashes will be bundled up and available at these things. So there's often sources of fabric out there that don't require you to spend any money on new things. Yeah. Wow, this has been a fascinating discussion. I feel like we could probably go on telling each other about different charitable groups and so on for hours. I think we've talked about how people can get started, and of course you absolutely, getting together with others in a group is fantastic, but I think we've touched on this. Even if you've just got quilts that you finished 20 years ago that have been in the closet or something, then this is a great place to take them. And certainly I know on the day one, we were talking about storytelling through quilts and the kind of historical representation and the concerns about the younger generations not wanting to inherit these kind of things. And so it's fantastic to be able to get them into use rather than just having them gathering dust. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think we should bring out before we sign off?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Laurie.
I was just gonna say, just encourage people to really kind of follow their passion on it, or if they have that inkling, kind of that whisper, just see where it leads, because I mean, that's how I got started in connecting with communities. And I have appreciated the opportunity to make things and give them, but I've gotten so much back from all of this. And so it just kind of started with that little moment. So just definitely recognize it and follow it.
Absolutely. And, whatever your connection, whatever you feel the most connection with, whether it's cancer survivors or neonatal units or homelessness or whatever it is, there's an organization that's working with that community. And Celeste, did you have a...
I've just, even in our group here, the 4 panelists, we've all moved. We've all moved from one place to another. And I remember telling a friend of mine when she moved away, that a Canadian friend who's now moved somewhere else, go to the local quilt guild. Just arrive at the quilt guild. You're going to find like-minded people and you're going to find aunts and uncles and everybody. You're going to find family. And then, of course, there's the connection to do the outreach and so on. But for yourself, quilting guilds offer connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to add to Celeste's, also find the quilt shop, because the quilt shop will know who is gathering, what time, and where. So also a great source of for connection.
I heard something in a different forum for business owners that people basically just need a reason to visit a quilt store. Once you've got customers in your quilt store, they rarely leave empty-handed. So quilt stores always welcome people to come and hang out there for various different groups and so on, because there's always at least a fat quarter or a pair of scissors or something that you just can't go home without.
And
Sorry.
noticed in the chat, Mark wrote the Trenton Quilts of Valor group supply the fabric and the pattern. So there's no cost to you, just your time and your love. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that, Mark.
That's awesome. Thank you, Marge. And yeah, there's my guild similarly, from donations from people, they put together packs where you just need to do the sewing essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think is a fabulous idea. Well, thank you all so much for talking about this. It's an emotional topic. It's something that gives back so much to the community and is so worthwhile. I just want to make sure that people know where to find you if they want to follow up on any of this or want to explore the amazing quilts that we're seeing in all of your backgrounds. So if we just quickly like tell people how to contact you, Manon, Laurie, and then Celeste. Manon, kick us off.
So you can find me at Mom and Me Quilting Co. and the and is A-N-D on all the socials, as well as my website to find out all about my programs and my classes. And you can grab my free guides there as well. And I just want to thank you, Bea, for this fabulous event of community gathering us all together. And it was really great to be here on this discussion panel today. So thank you.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Laurie, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me at coloradothreadworks.com. Same thing, Colorado Threadworks on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then if you have an interest in the U.S. Quilts of Valor Foundation, it's qovf.org. And again, really appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And finally, Celeste.
meerkatshweshwe.com is my website, and similar for Facebook and Instagram. And I've loved being here. Thank you.
I've loved talking to you all, and so thank you so much. I am at beburn.com, or of course Quilt and Learn will usually find me as well. Thank you all so much for this. It's been fantastic, and I hope everyone has the great rest of their weekend. Thank you.
Go and relax now, Bea.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.